In this session, I'll be sharing with you thoughts that I learned over the years about how to build a teaching practice. In my early years, I built a private teaching practice at Hal Leonard Music in Winona, Minnesota. After doing that for a couple of years, I began teaching in my home and experienced what it's like to have a home teaching practice. From there, I went to the public schools in Alexandria, Minnesota as an orchestra director and experienced being a public school music teacher, teaching all of the stringed instruments. Then I was fortunate to begin teaching guitar at McPhail Center for the Arts, which was then part of the University of Minnesota. And for about a dozen years, I helped build a guitar teaching practice of my own and then a whole department for guitar at McPhail. In about 1985, my partner Jack McNally and myself began what began as our own private teaching to becoming a school, first of guitar, and then with many fine musicians here in Minneapolis and St. Paul area, what eventually became McNally Smith College of Music. During all of these experiences, both teaching as a teacher myself and then also helping to build many programs in music, I've come to understand what it takes to build a teaching practice. So I'm hoping to share with you some of the things that I've learned, and I hope you're able to glean some helpful information for yourself to use in your planning for your life. Now let's take a look at gaining some experience teaching. If we've never taught before, how do we do that? Well, we don't need a formal teaching practice to be able to gain a little experience. Usually it's helpful to prepare in some way before that. Maybe we have some friends that want to learn how to play a little bit of guitar. So, accept the opportunity. Teaching friends is one way to do it. Another way would be to look at if we know any kids, kids in the neighborhood or kids, children of relatives or those types of things. Try to take the opportunity to show them how to play. Sometimes when we're with somebody and we're playing them, some kids will come up and say, I'd like to learn how to play. Well, try it out, see what happens. We gain a lot by just gaining the experience of interacting with these different age groups and how they see things, and when they attempt to learn how to play, what experience it goes through to do that. And the same thing with older folks as well, and people who are our own age or teenagers, different age groups. Let's learn how to communicate with them and take the opportunity to learn how to teach a little bit if you get a chance. Different age groups, from adults, children, teens, these are three separate groups, and they all take different communication styles. And let's learn how to communicate with them and see where your talents fit. One of the things that we're working on at this stage of just before we set up a teaching practice is to learn how to demonstrate doing something. A lot of guitar teaching is demonstrating how to play. We play something and the student wants to be able to learn it. So we want to pick up demonstration skills. And anything that we are able to do that, whether it's teaching how to ride a bike or how to draw or do anything, are ways of demonstrating, and they help us with that skill. Another aspect for teachers that is to be able to play with beginners, especially for those of us coming right out of going to school or in college or playing with bands. And we're used to playing with musicians, and there's a lot of assumed knowledge that we have. When we start playing with beginners, people who have never played at all before, we have to learn how to think like a beginner. And a lot of the things that we take for granted and assume, we have to kind of break down and figure out, okay, no, wait, just how do we do that? And so it's a different experience of learning how to communicate and think and be able to help people who are at the very beginning stage, especially when we've been playing for a good number of years. Another aspect of teaching is to learn how to accompany beginners. We're playing with musicians, we're used to playing with people who are playing at our level or close to it. When we're accompanying beginners, they're struggling to learn how to play, and we have to play with them while they're learning how to play. And so that's its own little art form of keeping the beat, making it sound good, supporting the student as they're playing, making it fun and musical for them while not getting in the way or playing too loud or covering them up. All these aspects go with the art of learning how to accompany a student. So try to gain a little experience with that. And a final aspect that we can sometimes gain some experience with is learning to communicate not with just students in the age group, but also with parents. It's different arts in terms of when we're talking with people at the various age, whether teens or whether they're adults or whether they're students. And when we're talking with parents who are coming in and they'll be paying for the lessons of the child, we need to learn how to relate to all these different folks. And it's often very different than relating to our own friends and age groups. Once we've had some experiences that allow us to think that, yeah, I'd like to learn how to teach, or I'm interested in building a teaching practice, then here are some things to consider. What type of setting is it that we are going to teach in? There is a music store setting. If we can find a job at a music store, it's a wonderful place to start. There is a music school setting. There's lots of community music schools, different music schools, and that's another different atmosphere. And there's also teaching at home and teaching at a private school or having your own private studio. Let's take a look at each of these and see what they're like. If we're looking at teaching in a music store, that has some advantages because the music store is usually going to be able to get students for you. So they have people that are inquiring, people that are there to buy instruments, and a certain inflow of beginning students and other students. And that will help you to build your teaching practice by having those students. Sometimes there's also colleagues, other guitar teachers, other teachers of other instruments, and that will also help you so you have a community, a base of support that you can work with. Of course, music stores will take a portion of the fees that they charge for the lessons because they're providing a studio space for you. So you have to look at that and what the results of that is for your income and how that works. If you're looking at a music school is an opportunity, and there you're going to have the same thing where they have an inflow usually of students that are going to school and beginners, and so it can be a reliable source of new students. Sometimes it's harder to get positions at the music school. They're more selective, and people tend to stay there for a longer time, so maybe harder to find openings. It's not something that you can take for granted that you're going to be able to get a teaching job at a music school. But if you're able to land one, that's sometimes a great opportunity, because usually the types of students that go to the music schools are the ones that will stay longer. Another setting is teaching at home. If you have a home that's in a neighborhood where there are children and teens, and you may be able then to advertise and allow the students to come in and teach at your home. The great advantage of teaching at home is that you're already paying your mortgage, or you're already paying for the space there where you're living, and so therefore you can just charge your rate for the students. But you do have to be able to attract the students to your place, and so being able to advertise and get good word of mouth and having students come to you is part of what it takes to build a home teaching practice. Teaching in a private studio, if you're going to have a private studio that's not in your home, you may share it with others or you have it in yourself. It's a studio practice. But then you're going to be talking about renting space or leasing space, and usually if you're at that stage you already have a number of students. But in that way, you have a space and it's away from some of the distractions that can come in terms of being in your home teaching practice. The next area that we look at is types of teaching practices. The type of teaching practice that I'm talking about here is determined by the inflow of the available students. Students generally fall into three categories. Children, that's children between the ages of 5 and 12. Teens, you're usually talking about young people between 13 and 17, and adults. And usually adults that are studying are going to be in their 30s or older. And they have a stable income stream. So students aged 18 to 29 are usually found in college settings or are too involved, so it's less likely we have students in that age group, but sometimes it happens. So we're going to take each of these three basic areas that guitar practice is going to be built around and take a look at some of their characteristics. First, for children. Children are the most stable. They need support of their parents, so their potential to study with teachers is longer. It can be as long as up to 12 years. Say they start at age 5 or 6 and they start and study with you all the way through until they graduate from high school. So they'll study for longer periods. And then children's literature and a special approach for children because of their age is something to consider, because it's a whole different type of teaching practice. So some people don't enjoy it because they don't enjoy playing children's literature and the things that are necessary. But I would strongly consider the stability of the teaching practice there, because that has important economic impact. Also, other aspects of children's practices to think about is that their fingers are too small for normal types of guitar teaching. Basically, when we're teaching popular music, we start learning how to play chords and improvise in popular music, but the children's fingers they're too tiny to be playing too much with chords, and so a different approach is needed. The second area that we're looking at is teens. For teens, there's usually a high level of interest in electric guitar and in popular music making. So there is definitely interest and excitement about taking guitar lessons amongst teens. However, there is a downside in which that they're more stable because they're involved in trying out so many different types of activities. So the strengths of the practice for teaching with teens is that there can be a larger inflow of teens that will come in for lessons in certain areas, and they're interested in playing popular music and excited to do it. And so that's a wonderful thing. They're very creative and very dynamic, and at that age they love to play with others as well too, so they're wanting to form bands, and so you have dynamics there that are great for learning how to teach and play music. But there is the downside of that they tend to not study with you for that long. So maybe 1 or 2 or 3 years is the length of time that you'll be able to have teens studying with you. The third area is the area of adults. And adults are self-supporting. So with children, they need to have their parents paying for the lessons, and usually it's the same with the teens, though not always. But for adults, they're going to be self-motivated and wanting to be studying, and then of course they'll be paying for their own lessons. And there's another age group that can be more stable and stay with you for a certain number of years. Usually not as long as the children, but for a lengthier period of time as possible. And usually the motivation for adults to study is that they didn't have the chance to do it when they were younger, and this is something that's relaxing for them or healing for them because they enjoy it, and it's a way for them to kind of relieve the pressures that they have in their working life, and so coming in to study and make music is something that is pleasant for them and something that they enjoy very much. So those are the three particular types of teaching practice: children, teens, or adults. Now we'll take a look at how the type of teaching practice impacts income. Sometimes it's important to understand that it's not just what we prefer to do. We might prefer to teach adults or prefer to teach teens or children, but we usually get a mix, and if we're trying to build a teaching practice as an income stream and a means of supporting ourselves, it's important to understand what will work well in terms of maintaining a steady income stream. The basic principle here is that stability and continuity equals more income. So the higher the turnover ratio of students, the less stable the income stream. If a teacher has 10 students and 1 month later 5 students have dropped out, the income has dropped by half, plus the time lag between adding new students means that the average number of students taught and income received is less over time than having a more stable teaching load. So to build a stable private teaching practice, focus on the groups of students that are the most stable. Children are the most stable, so targeting your teaching practice towards the 6 to 12-year-old student is a way of building stability and increasing income for yourself as a guitar teacher. And a Smith method can be very helpful for you in this regard. Adults are also a stable group, but because of the responsibilities that they carry, fewer are able to be consistent with their commitment to study. So adults usually enjoy applying for a certain amount of time, but then stress and work and the flows of life interrupt, and they don't tend to make as much progress with their music making as they would generally like to. So over a period of time, they enjoy and they kind of float in and out, but they can make decent progress depending upon how much time they have to practice. Teens are the least stable, but they have the highest interest rate. So just know that when you start teens, they're unlikely to stay with you for very long, so you make as much progress and time and enjoy the time that you have with them during the time that they're able to spend that with you. When beginning your practice, it's good to be open to all types of students and fill your available hours with students as they come in. As time goes forward and your available hours lessen, then it's wise to accept new students who have the most potential to be stable. As time goes forward and your available hours lessen, then it is wise to accept new students who have the most potential to be stable. This being the case over time, your teaching practice may grow to have more children than other students just simply because they stay with you longer. No matter how mature your teaching practice becomes, it will always need a feed-in base of new students. Because of people moving, changing jobs, family instability, students becoming interested in other things, and other factors, there will be turnover in your teaching practice, no matter how good of a teacher you are. So good retention means hanging on to 60 to 80% of your students from year to year. Somewhere between 20 and 40% of your student body will need to be replaced. So knowing this will help you in your planning. Now we're going to take a look at commitment and goal setting. Our first step is to set a goal as to the size of your teaching practice. I always think of 10 to 30 students being part-time and 40 to 65 students equaling a full-time commitment. So you want to set your income stream goal, determine your tuition in the locality in which you're thinking of having your teaching practice, and then of course be able to subtract out any expenses that you may occur depending upon your type of teaching practice. So here's a set of figures that kind of shows an example by month. If you're using it as an example of $20 per lesson and you get 10 students per week, you're looking about $800 coming over a 4-week period. And so on down the line here with 10 students, 20 students, 30 students, 40 students. And if you're moving into a full-time type of work, you're looking at 50 or even 60 students. So that shows you a monthly income stream that's possible just teaching private lessons that are usually half an hour in length and at $20 per lesson. Now let's take a look at examples per year. When you're thinking about a year, we're looking at about 9 months of an income stream, plus then your summer, and the summers never tend to turn out to be as well as the normal academic year. So we're figuring at about 50% of the norm. So here are some figures that just kind of show expectations. If you're looking at part-time work at 10 students, and then looking at it from a yearly income standpoint of 10 students, 20 students, 30, and moving into full-time work with 40 or 50 or 60 students. Then our third step is to evaluate our time commitment. If you're looking at it and you're teaching half-an-hour private lessons, 10 students, and that'd be about 5 hours per week. And so here are some stats with 10 students, 20, 30, and then moving to full-time work of 40, 50, or 60. So you're looking at anywhere from 5 to 30 hours of actual teaching time. But of course, lessons don't always go back to back, and so sometimes you're there in the setting for more hours because you're waiting for another student to come. So you have commuting time and time between lessons as an extra factor. Days of the week and the efficiency in which you use those days is another factor. So here's some more stats here. Just looking at 10 to 20 students, can you fit them all into 2 days? Or 20 to 30 to 40 students, can you squeeze them into 3 days, or they're going to take more days? And then if you're looking at 40 to 50 students, which is getting to full-time work again, trying to do that within 4 days, or 50 to 60 students, it might stretch into 5 days. So that's the number of days in which you could have a teaching practice active as you're able to gain more and more students. And again, that's based on all private lessons going at a half an hour. And there are other ways in which we could organize as well. Now let's take a look at the time of day. For teaching practices, during the daytime, sometimes you'll have homeschooled children available and also adults. So they were talking about taking guitar lessons in the morning, weekday mornings and early afternoons when most kids are in school. But you can get some homeschoolers and adults to come during those times. Then when we're looking at after school and early evening hours, children, teens, and adults all become available, depending upon your locality. So we're talking about lessons going on from 3 o'clock in the afternoon to 8 o'clock, 8:30 at night. Friday evenings, Saturday afternoons, and Sundays are usually not bookable. So most of the time we're not be able to get too many students during those times, and because of that, tend not to book those times at all. So most music lessons are really happening then between Monday and Thursday, and sometimes in some communities on Saturday mornings as well. Musicians can set up a private teaching practice, earn a desirable income stream, and then complement that income stream with performance income from gigs, church services, and any other types of performing that you find available in your community. So teaching income plus performance income plus income from any other sources can equal steady work and the freedom that's associated with self-employment. Developing the art and skill of being an excellent teacher is essential to earning the income. It's not just getting the students, we have to be an excellent teacher to maintain them and to have that steady income and stable income that we would like to see in a teaching practice. People are happy to be able to study with excellent instructors, and excellence leads to more stability. Part of being an excellent teacher can be adopting a proven teaching method that works, and I'm hoping that you will find the Smith method to be part of that approach. Now, as we form a teaching practice, especially if we're on our own or having a teaching at home or our own private studio, then we'll need to have policies. If we're working in a school or within a music store, they usually will have policies in place. But policies will need to be in place in some manner, both for the fairness for to all of the students, but also to yourself as an instructor. So we'll need to have policies about tuition. What are we charging for tuition, and how does the tuition to be paid? Monthly, weekly, quarterly. So we have to figure out how that might be, but have a policy for that. So there's a rate, and it's kind of based on what's going on in your area, in your local area, the local practice. And you're able to increase that rate over time, especially as your teaching practice and the demand for it increases. So when you're beginning your teaching practice, you charge a rate so that students will come in and after you're able to fill all of your slots and have increased demand, maybe even have a waiting list, then you're able to look at being able to raise the rate as your reputation and demand increases. There's types of tuition that you can charge depending upon how you want to structure your practice. So you can be having prices based on private lessons, on group lessons, or some combination of those. Then you're looking at time increments. You can have lessons that are 15 minutes long for children, or 30 minutes, or 45 minutes, or hour-long lessons for more advanced students. And of course, you can charge rates accordingly. Be careful as an instructor, you have to get into a pace for the for the length of each lesson that you're teaching. So it's kind of a different pacing when you're teaching, because it's easy to have a 15-minute lesson grow into half an hour lesson, but you really can't charge them for half an hour if they're used to paying for a 15-minute lesson, or for a half an hour lesson turning into a 45-minute lesson just because you took the time to do that. So you look at the pace that you're able to teach, what it is you're trying to teach, and then structure your lessons accordingly. And then the payment variables, you have people the rate that they're comfortable paying, and there's how you want to charge. So you have paying by the lesson, which is the least stable, and then you have the paying by the month or quarterly, which I have found to be better practices. Now everybody faces, what do you do for missed lessons? So if you're charging for lessons and students miss, or you as an instructor miss, you'll have to have policies for that. So you can charge for missed lessons and deal with makeups, or you can decide not to charge for missed lessons. It's whatever you feel comfortable in terms of doing for your practice. More stability in income allows for charging and making up lessons, but sometimes that's hard to do. So you have a make-up lesson policy for makeups, and then you look at another policy is whether or not you want to have parents or guardians attend the lessons of the children. I've always found that helpful, especially for the younger ages 6, 7, 8, or 9, sometimes, especially at the beginning stages, to have the parents attend the lessons, or a guardian or a parent attend the lesson with the child. And you also have such things as group lessons and recitals. For group lessons, you can charge a group lesson rate. You might have 4 people studying at a time, or 2 or 3 that come in at the same time, and you can charge a less expensive rate, but a group rate that allows you to make more income during that time period. And when you're getting involved with a teaching practice that has a large number of students and you're having recitals and different things, it's maybe better to charge at a quarterly or a monthly rate, and people are paying for the program instead of so much on the lesson or per lesson basis. Now we're at the stage where we can talk about building a teaching practice. With goals in mind and locations set, here are some steps to consider. First, you begin teaching in a location with open acceptance. Any students that are coming in, you want to be able to accept them and start teaching them and start building your teaching practice. So you build the desired number of students at 1 or more locations. Then, after that's done, you look at it and centralize to the best locations. So we're talking about a year or 2 years has passed, and now you've got you've filled the days that you want to teach. Some areas are working better than others. So then you have to make this decision of, okay, if I want to build to more students, then I'll need to drop the areas that aren't as productive and centralize to those areas that are productive with the most demand, so that more students can be built in that area. So you centralize to the best location and drop the ones that are less productive. And the next stage of growth is to, when you've reached the number of students that is your goal, then you start maintaining your feed-in base and replace your dropouts with quality new students. So you can begin a little bit more selective in the students that you start taking in terms of new students. So you want to base your selectivity for new students on their interest and their ability and their stability and their fit for your practice. When we've been doing that for a while, and the quality of our teaching practice and the students that we have in it is getting more stable and is more steady, and we have better students who have been with us for a longer period of times, and you have as many students as you need, then you may consider adding other teachers to your teaching practice and to build your teaching practice then into a program. The realistic estimate to accomplish, depending upon your feet and base for building a teaching practice, is anywhere on average up to around 3 years. By that I mean if you start and dedicate your efforts full-time to trying to get a teaching practice, from no students to try to getting a full-time students, it can take up to 3 years to get that accomplishment done. So the greater the number of students, especially of younger students, in the practice leads to more stability, and you can get that stability over time, and that also allows for a better income stream and a more stable teaching practice. Now let's take a look at building a program. Once you have your teaching practice built for yourself, and yet there's more demand, then you have some different options that you may want to consider. One of those options would be taking the younger children that you have, who are learning the same level of rote songs, and have them meet once a week for a group lesson. This weekly group lesson would then have everyone playing their repertoire together. And you could do that for 45 minutes or 50 minutes or whatever the time period happens to be. The children would enjoy getting together to make the music, and you also would have the option then to have kind of a different type of learning experience than you can do for the children just one-on-one. Some of the advantages would be that the students themselves would get a chance to get in front of the group and play their song, kind of helping to lead the group. Another would be that you could add some additional harmonies to the song so that students could be playing little parts that would help make the music experience a little better. You could also add a drum machine to play along with and give them more experience and with the groove part of the music. And then you just have all the social dynamics that come with a group and the exciting things that can happen while you're playing and making music together. So all of that I think would help strengthen the program. Instead of just having everybody come to private lessons, have them come to a group lesson once a week. But then what do you do about learning how to play the new music? Well, to learn the new music for these younger children, again, is you would teach them the new song in shorter increments. So maybe it'd be 15-minute lessons. Once a week they come in to learn their new song that they'll be going ahead to, and then have them play their repertoire in the group lesson format. And then another thing for building a program is adding additional instructors to form a program or a guitar department. This adds a little diversity of approach, because when you have more than one instructor, they're not going to teach in exactly the same way. They have their own style of doing it. But it makes it easier to combine students and hold concerts. For example, during our teaching practice in my McPhail days, we used to have around 125 young students in our program. And we had several instructors doing music from the rote book and the first 2 reading books of the Smith method. All right, to summarize then, let's take a look at the ingredients that it takes to build our teaching practice. First, we need a committed instructor, one that will be able to work with each student and help them to learn how to enjoy making music. Secondly, we have to have time that's consistently dedicated to teaching. Third, we need to have a place that's suitable for teaching, that's comfortable for parents to come, it's safe for children, and without distractions. Fourth, we ourselves as instructors have to have perseverance. We have to be in it for the long haul, because there's ups and downs with building the teaching practice. First we struggle to have the students, and then we struggle to retain the students, and it takes our persevering attitude to keep at it that allows us to build the quality students and the quality program over time. Fifth, we're going to look at mission. That's probably the most important thing to have in mind. Our mission as a guitar instructor is to help people to learn how to love making music. And money, the income stream, is an afterflow that comes from doing a good job. Sixth, we have to have excellent methods in our practice. I'm hoping that in this way you'll take a look at the Smith method and any other methods that may be helpful for your students at various stages, so that you can build an excellent teaching manner, but using excellent materials to help you accomplish your goals as an instructor and to meet the needs of each student. Seventh, we have to do the work. That's all of the work. That means the work of recruiting students, of trying to do an excellent job of teaching so you have a building of the word of mouth. I work with all of the students, each of the students, as we're helping them to grow and to learn. The work of holding little concerts and things so parents and the students can enjoy their music making. And of being a part of a community where our music making is accepted and desired. And finally, and very importantly, we need to look at how we build relationships. To be successful as an instructor, we need to be able to have relationships with the student, building it as a teacher-to-student relationship that's accepted and productive, relationships with the parents so that they understand what we're doing and support us in that, and relationship with our colleagues and fellow instructors and vendors and people in the community. And it's all about building relationships time and again. And keeping that in mind will help us, because sometimes we're tempted to make decisions that could harm us in terms of relationships. And you never want to do that. Always work on the positive and always work on building positive relationships with all, because that's what it takes to build a healthy practice and a healthy music-making community. Well, I hope you've gotten some idea of how to build a teaching practice. So, wishing you well in meeting your goals and wishing you well with making music. And if there's anything that I could take with you as a message, if you want to have a successful teaching practice, the key ingredient is the enjoyment of making music with your students. Thanks and God bless.